This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Have you heard about the 2018 study that showed half of prenatal vitamins tested had unacceptable levels of heavy metals? No? Well, now you have. I'm Kat, mother of three and founder of Ritual, the company making traceability the new standard in the supplement industry. I remember staring at my prenatal vitamins and finding all these things I was trying to avoid. High amounts of heavy metals, synthetic colorants, and unnecessary ingredients. So, at 4 months pregnant, I quit my job and started Ritual because I believe that all women deserve to know what they're putting in their bodies and why. I'm so proud of our prenatal vitamin. The ingredients are 100% traceable, it's third-party tested for microbes and heavy metals, and recently received the Purity Award from the Clean Label Project. You see, we trace like a mother because, let's be honest, no one cares quite like a mother. But don't just take my word for it. Trace for yourself with 25% off at ritual.com/podcast.
Don't give up on us, friend. Trust me, you've never been closer.
Welcome back, everybody, to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. I'm your host, Tony Black, and this is the final episode of Season 1 of the X-Cast, I guess, and certainly of the X-Files. This is the Erlenmeyer Flask, and I am really excited to be joined once again for this final foray into Season 1 by Andrew Brooker.
Hello, mate.
It's great, isn't it? We finally got to the finale after all these months.
I know, and what a belter of an episode to end on as well.
Oh, it's just wonderful. I mean, we will get into this, obviously, more, but it's such a cracker of a season finale. And it's just really exciting to be here after, we're recording this at the end of May. We started doing the X-Cast at the end of December, or middle of December, middle to end of December. So it's 6 months, yeah. About as long as it takes to air the season, really.
With a stop for season 10, like halfway through as well.
That is true. Admittedly, it would probably have been a couple of months earlier had we not had season 10.
It still blows me away that we're in 2016 and we've had a season 10 of the X-Files, though, mate. As much as, maybe half of it failed to hit expectations, it blows me away that we had a season 10.
Yeah, it is. When you think about it and you look back at it, it is exciting. It's great. And speaking of, actually, by the time this airs, the Blu-ray of the event series of season 10 will be out on the 13th of June, but this is ahead of us. So that'll be, I don't know about you, I'll be looking forward to snapping that up to get the extras on there, even though we've both got them on like Apple TV or whatever.
Yeah, see, I've got them on my iTunes. I probably won't pick it up day one. I might, what I'm actually going to do in a couple of weeks from now, and actually probably when the Blu-ray comes out, I'm actually off work on holiday for a bit, so I kind of fancy binging the whole season 10 again. I mean, I can do it in a day. It's 6 episodes. So I might bang through from start to finish and see if it's worth picking up on Blu-ray, because I still don't own the Blu-ray box set for the X-Files. I have all of that on iTunes as well. So instead of lugging a massive Blu-ray box around, I just pick up my Apple TV and off I go.
Well, yeah. It's much easier, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, blasting them in a day sounds good. That sounds like a good plan. Something I'll have to do myself. But I think I will get the event series just to see what extras are on there. So let's hope that by the time this airs, it'll be lived up to expectations. But we're a long way off from season 10. We are covering, as I say, the final episode of season 1. So let's explore the Erlenmeyer Flask. The Erlenmeyer Flask is the 24th and final episode of the first season of The X-Files. It first aired on May the 13th, 1994, was written by Chris Carter and directed by R.W. Goodwin. It sees Mulder and Scully investigating on a tip-off from Deep Throat a mysterious individual who seems to be evading authorities and bleeds green blood.
Dr. Morlaserio being pulled away here during an intense man. No additional information has been released. Dr. Morlaserio being pulled away here during an intense...
Mulder, you've been through this tape 100 times. What exactly are you hoping to find?
I don't know.
And all he told you was to watch Channel 8?
Yeah, that's all he said.
Do we even know why the suspect was being chased?
As far as I can tell, he wouldn't pull over for a moving violation.
Well, that ought to put him on the 10 most wanted list.
There's got to be something here. Some detail. Something we're not seeing.
How do you know he's not just yanking your chain, this deep throat character?
Why would he do that?
Well, he has lied to you by his own admission.
I don't think he'd call if there wasn't something here. Something I'm supposed to see. Something he wants me to see.
Then what are you missing?
Now, that only really tips the, it's tip of the iceberg, really, of this one. But out of 10, Brooker, what are we giving the Erlenmeyer Flask?
I said 10.
Yeah.
I adore this episode. Especially after the massive bitch slap of mediocrity we've had up to this point. It's such a great episode to end the season on. It's just a great episode overall. Everything about it. I thought it was quite interesting, right? So I literally, maybe an hour before we started recording, I watched it again for note-taking purposes. And a bit like the synopsis you've just read out, my notes barely touch the surface. There's so much going on in this episode, but there's no notes to take. It's just, you just need to sit and watch and just let it all in. It's such a great episode.
It's a hard one to note take to, because you just get sucked into it, and I had to keep stopping the episode to make sure I didn't miss bits and. But
even when you're pausing it during watching it, because I'd done the same thing, I'd pause it and quickly scribble this down. It's all dialogue. It's all exposition. It's all just throwing the story at you. The story that we've all been dying for the last 5 or 6 weeks. It's all story. It's all, everything is just told to you. There's no, there's no big special things to take note of. It's all, like I say, it's all exposition. It's such a well put together episode. There's nothing to write about. I'm actually terrified about the quiz for this episode because I wrote almost nothing.
It's true. I think one of the things that this does, and I mean, for me, I'm going to go right out there now and say I think this is the best season finale the show ever did. And the reason that is because I give it a 10 as well, straight away, no hesitation. It's the best episode of season 1 for me by some margin. And I think the reason is that it manages to be genuinely fascinating in terms of the mythology. It opens up a whole new load of different things. But it's a bloody good story as well. And it actually just doesn't stop moving from the beginning. It's got such a yard of pace on it. It's really well written. It's probably the best script I've ever seen Chris Carter do. Actually, it's really well paced. It's really well written. It's got a really intriguing story, and it just bolts along. And it's not very often that a finale, even though season finales of the X-Files do tend on the whole to be good and to be interesting, this one just is a really solid, rounded hour of television as well. And I think that's why. It's a cut above. It's weird in how much better it is than pretty much most of what we've just seen in 23 episodes before.
Oh yeah, it's like they start. We had the pilot and we had Conduit, and then this, and then they just tried to fill in the gap between.
Yeah,
they knew they just had to get to this episode, and this, like you say, this episode blows away pretty much everything we've watched in the previous 23 episodes. It's
funny, Chris Carter said that he wanted the season finale to be an extremely memorable tour de force, and I think he achieves that, quite honestly. Yeah. He said that it evolved over a season. He said it was the season ender that something I'd thought about all year long. For me, it was a result of a year-long learning experience. And he said, I'd been wanting to do a story about alien genes and alien hybrids, and the idea that there were scientists who were using this material from aliens that had been collected or recovered or salvaged and trying to mix them with human DNA. So it's the whole thing that he'd been thinking of probably since he wrote the pilot. And you can tell that he'd spent a year fermenting the whole thing. He'd given it a lot of thought, I think, and he'd managed to craft something that was really good. It makes me wonder if he wasn't writing this script and tinkering with it all the way through the year and just making it better. That's the difference between a well-written film often and a poorly, received film. They have time to actually build a good script, and I think that's what he did here.
Absolutely. And when you look at it, and I said this on the previous episode, because we're watching these episodes not just as fans, but we're getting to be critical of them if we need to be. We're taking notes. We're talking about them with other people, and you look at them and you go, now when you watch this is the end of season 1. This has perfectly set up the next 9 seasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything that's mentioned here is brought back time after time after time. Over the next 8 or 9 years, it's it really is. Okay, obviously it's the season finale, but from the conspiracy point of view, it feels like this is where the conspiracy really starts, really kicks off.
Yeah, this is the point, because it's not just about it's personal for them, and it ends up being very personal for them, and gets them into it's in a way it's writing them into a corner. It's one of the things that they found out roughly around this time that Gillian Anderson was pregnant, and there was a lot of question marks at the time as to whether or not shutting down the X-Files at the end was a reaction to that. But Chris Carter says he always wanted to do it. He said that it was a way of bookending the season. He said, talking about how the FBI wanted to close the X-Files down at the beginning, he said, well, let's get to the end of the first season. Why not make them successful? And he had every intention of reopening them next season. But it's that whole thing of, let's do this. Let's, a lot of shows wouldn't have had the guts to do that. Let's actually end bring the X-Files to a close. And apparently it got Fox worried. Glenn Morgan said that that was another thing we had to fight the network on. They said closing the X-Files is completely unacceptable. We will not air it because people will believe the show's been cancelled. And then Glenn Morgan said, my response was, well, it's your job to let them know it hasn't, and this is the best way to end the season.
Yeah, that's it. We write the episodes. You put the marketing out, make sure people know that it's coming back.
Exactly.
And we're talking. We've said this a million times in the last few months. We're talking the mid-90s. People watched stuff on TV and they watched it to the end. And every time you got to the end of a season, it was X-Files will be coming back in September or whenever it was coming back. It's just your job to make sure that they say that at the end of the episode so people don't think that it's been cancelled. I can see why people would think it had been cancelled when you get to the end of the episode. But again, it is definitely Fox's job to make sure people know it's coming back.
Well, yeah, and there is the question mark as to whether or not it could have functioned as a finale. And I suppose in some respects it could have done, like a finale. I've said before while we were doing the X-Cast, I don't think the X-Files would have got more than one season nowadays if it had done what it did here. But I think that if this had been the last episode, I think it would have worked but even though the X-Files is closed, you've got to a point where several massive things have happened to these guys at this point. They got closer to the conspiracy than they ever did before, the truth than they ever did before. They lose someone massively important to them, and their entire work gets shut down. It's very much not a case of, oh well, that's the end, bye. It's very much a case of shit. These guys have taken a pounding here. They need to fight back. They need to get back what they've lost. You wouldn't watch this and go, oh, okay, I'm happy with that. That was good. That was a solid year of TV. You'd be like, no, what? No.
Well, absolutely everybody would have sat and watched that on air day and gone, no.
Yeah. Definitely. You wouldn't have gone, yeah, okay. I'm happy it ends there. No chance. You would have definitely wanted that show to come back. So I think most people would have gone, that can't be it, can it? And that's the thing. That's what they were clever enough to do, in that they wrote an episode that does function as a told beginning, middle, and end, but it has a cliffhanger that might not say to be continued on it, but it is in all intents and purposes. And that's what's great about it. It's just phenomenal. It's exciting. It's funny. It's fast paced. It reveals so much. The amount of massive mythology that is in this episode that, like you said, ends up coming back again and again and again over 9-10 years is huge.
Oh, it's a phenomenal amount of story that, whether or not Chris Carter knew at the time what he was doing and how much he was putting in, it would be coming back. Nowadays, to try and cram all of that in would just be, it's an amazing feat to have done that, and to make it such a good episode at the same time as well.
Exactly. That takes skill, and that's what he and R.W. Goodwin and everybody did really with this. They just punched ahead of their game, at the top of their game. And funnily enough, they all found it exhausting because they were knackered by this point. Goodwin has said that they got to a point now at the end of the season where it was really hard. It was a hard one to film. He says it was in terms of a challenge and coming at the end of the season after a really long, tough time. This was a difficult show, demanding physically, mentally, every other way. He said at the end of a very long year, the cast and crew were so tired, yet they all took a deep breath and just said, "Here we go, guys," and they gave the finale a 200% effort. There's not one department that fell down, and he's right. He's absolutely right. They all went, "Fuck it, we're gonna do this brilliantly."
And everything about this episode says that as well. Everything about this episode says we put everything we have into this.
We throw everything at this one, and they did. So let's get into it then. Let's explore the Erlenmeyer Flask in more detail. So the teaser begins with, I've got to say, I've never seen a car go so high over a hill when it's in a chase. Have you?
That's Bullet levels of hill jumping, isn't it? At least in Bullet, he was doing it in a Mustang or something. Not
Yeah.
a fucking Ford POS.
A beat up old piece of shit. Yeah, it's true. But yeah, it's a thrilling chase actually. It's quite a short teaser. It's really action packed, isn't it? It's got loads of stuff in. As you meet the character of Dr. Sakare, as you find out later, who basically can drive cars fast paced, beat the shit out of cops almost in like a superhero way. It's a little bit like a Daredevil moment, isn't it? Where he just disarms the cops and
it's a good little fight actually. It's a nicely choreographed little bit of beating people up.
Yeah.
I actually, the cops beating on him looks a bit shit.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think it looks like one of them at least is trying to stab him with his nightstick, which clearly isn't going to work. But actually, when he gets the stick off him and starts hitting back, actually, it's only a couple of little hits, but it looks really good.
It's really good, and it's funny because you don't necessarily. I mean, at this point, you don't necessarily know that he's alien, even though you see him superhuman survive. He's bleeding green blood, which makes you go, oh well, obviously he's not quite human, but you don't necessarily know he's alien because there's no pretext for the green blood that the aliens we know ultimately that they bleed. It's a shame in a way though we didn't get more scenes of like these hybrids kicking ass. Because this is the only time I think they ever do that. And I was like, oh, this is really good. I want more scenes of these badass aliens that they have to try and take down. But no, it's a good, solid teaser. Really exciting. Really throws you right into the middle of the action, which no teaser's really done yet this season in that same way. And, of course, we get the credits, and there's a little tweak to the credits, isn't there, this time?
Yeah, we get the trust no one instead of the truth is out there, don't we?
Yeah, for the first time, they replaced the truth is out there. Obviously with a very key phrase, which, makes sense later on when we get to the end of the episode as to why that's there. But that was the first time that they changed the titles. It happens a few other times in the show, and we will cover that each one whenever we get there. It happens a couple of times for comic effect. It happens once or twice for, effects to create some good phrases. But, yeah, this is the first signature time that changes, and for good reason, really. Once we're out of the teaser, Mulder's fallen asleep to a film. Do you know what film he's fallen asleep to, by any chance?
It's Journey to the Centre of the Earth.
It is indeed, starring James Mason from 1959, talking about Icelandic paradise. That's my terrible James Mason impression. I'm terribly sorry. I sound more like Mr. Burns. Smithers! Damn you, Smithers.
I like it. It's not a bad impression.
Yeah, it's from Journey to the Centre of the Earth from 1959, which obviously is on purpose that they put that in there, talking about science and discovery and things like that. But I don't know about you, I liked how Mulder gets into the investigation here because it's so slim and tenuous what Deep Throat drops on him. He just says, right, put the news on. And from that, he has to extrapolate everything that happens next.
But the problem there, of course, we've said this a few times. But imagine doing that nowadays. Nowadays, reports are done so quickly. Quick, stick BBC News 24 on. Well, wait a minute, this is talking about the weather and the football.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do?
You would miss it now, wouldn't you? It'd be like, you wouldn't. That's true. It was back in the days where that would work. But yeah, he gets put onto the case. We first see the so-called crew cut man on that footage, who's the conspiracy baddie of the piece, sinister man with a crew cut, no other way really to describe him. But I just love the way that it takes a lot of little detailed investigation, like eventually figuring out that car has been swapped out of the crime scene due to the caduceus sign thing on it. And it's like, well, that's great, because it is the kind of little morsel that Mulder would have to chase.
But yeah, it's a proper little investigation, isn't it? You know, as opposed to him being handed all the stuff and him having to go and find a monster. He has to be an FBI agent for a bit, and he has to do some research and a bit of investigation. I really liked it, actually. I think it came out quite well.
I think as well what it does is, and I think there's a Deep Throat has got his own arc throughout this episode, just this episode, and I think it's all about Deep Throat committing himself more and more as the episode goes on. And this is all at first he wants to give him, really. Just this little smidgen is enough to keep Deep Throat safe and just say, right, well, there's something you need to see, find it. And Mulder's, because he's Mulder, he finds what most people would miss. And Deep Throat knows that. He knows he's smart enough to put the pieces together and figure out what he needs him to figure out and link to Dr. Berube. But it is an interesting arc, and I'll talk more about this because I've got a theory as to what really is going on with Deep Throat here. And this is the beginning of it, really. It gets them anyway to Dr. Berube with his really fucking loud monkeys in the lab. Every time I watch this, I think, how fucking loud are those monkeys? Imagine what it would have been like on set. Just them going, wah, like that.
That'd drive you bananas, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Imagine being like a sound man or something, or a cameraman. And I did laugh when he goes to say, they go and meet him, Dr. Berube, and he goes, "You Dr. Berube?" And he goes, "Yes, I'm actually very busy." And Mulder just goes, "I'm sorry." And he says it in such a flat way that you're not sorry, Mulder, are you? I'm sorry. Anyway.
He does that cop thing, though, doesn't it? Do you mind if I come in? I'm not asking you. I'm fucking coming in.
I'm coming in, but I'm just going to say this just because it's etiquette. It's it's getting them further down the rabbit hole. But there's the first point here where Scully questions Mulder over Deep Throat's motives at the end of this. And, they've been investigating for a little bit now. They're putting the pieces together, and then she stops him and goes, "Well, hang on a minute. Who is he? What's he here for? What does he want from you?" And there's a really good moment where she says, he says, "What, you think he does this because he gets off on it?" And she says, "No, I think he does it because you do."
Yeah.
And that's
a really good line.
It is. And it's interesting. What do you think about that? Do you think that Mulder maybe enjoys being dangled on a little line and goes off and fishes?
Oh, without a doubt. Every time in this season, every time that Deep Throat's turned up, and every time Mr. X turns up in later seasons, he jumps at the chance for a little bit of info that he can chase after. Yeah, I think she's bang on with that.
I think she's right as well, and I think it sticks with him enough that when Deep Throat later comes to him and sort of says to him, "Come on, get a move on, Mulder. You're not chasing this fast enough." And he turns around and confronts Deep Throat, and he says he starts questioning him, and says things like, "I've played the dutiful son." And he says, "Cut out the Obi-Wan Kenobi crap," which is a good line. But I don't know about you. I don't necessarily think he'd have done that if Scully hadn't made him think. And this is why she's good for him, because he would have just head first flung himself into Deep Throat's arms and said, "Look, lead me to the truth." Scully's there going, "Well, hang on, you don't know who he is." And all through the season, we've had this uncertainty as to if Deep Throat is playing him or not, haven't we? And we've talked about this at various points.
And at the same time, all through the season, we've had when Mulder needs it, Scully's the person that grounds him. Tells him exactly how it is, tells him straight, and says, and like here, you're following this guy blindly. Do you even know why? And I think you're right. I think it does stick with him, which is why we see him confront Deep Throat a little bit later on.
Yeah,
I think she needed to say it, and more importantly, I think he needed to hear it.
Me too. I think it's what makes their relationship so important. It's what makes her so important to him, in that she will tell him. She'll say, "Just think about this. Don't just rush in." And then Mulder does start to think, well, I am playing a role here. You are giving me all this, and just tell me the truth. He basically says to Deep Throat, "Just tell me what you need me to know." And Deep Throat's like, "I can't." And then he's like saying, "Don't give up, because you've never been closer." But he can't quite. And then he says, "Closer to what?" As if to say, "Fucking hell, just tell me." And he's like, "I can't." But again, it's that whole thing of Deep Throat, and this is, again, part of, he's pushing his neck out more and more the more the episode goes on. And in this, I think at this point, all he'd like to do is basically say, I've given you a little route in, right? You've got to go and figure it out. I'm not telling you anymore. I'm going to skip away before it gets too dangerous. But then the more that happens, the more he can't do that. And it's all what leads to his downfall in the end. But it's really important scenes, I think, between all these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, it's definitely him pushing a little harder and sticking his neck out, like you say, a little bit further each time, and further than he has done in the entire season leading up to this point. So, when he eventually does give just a little bit too much information, we end up with, well, how the episode ends.
Well, exactly. And then, so they continue in their investigation, and they're starting to put even more of these pieces together as Dr. Brooby seemingly kills himself, although immediately you go, no, he dead, he's been killed. But they mention things like this. I think another thing I like about this episode, and it's something that Chris Carter didn't get right a lot of the time, but when he did it well, is all the science, because there's a lot of science in this, and even though it's fringe science, there's a lot of, like, there's talk about how they were part of the Human Genome Project, which is a real thing, cataloguing the human genome, and this long-term, decades-long project. And things like, Scully going to the Dr. Carpenter and getting all this stuff with the computer bacteria and the chloroplasts, and it's really solid genetics. And as Chris Carter said earlier, and I said he was thinking a lot about this, and he's clearly gone away and done his research, I think, for this.
Yeah, I think he's spoken to a few people, who know what they're talking about when he's come to write this one, because it does, even from someone like me who's nowhere even close to science. My idea of science is making ice cream.
Yeah.
I don't know the first thing about what they're talking about on the show, but I believe all of it, and it all sounds real.
Yeah.
Even the fantastical bits of it sound real, which is something, like you say, they haven't got right much in this season up to this point. Some of it just sounds like utter, it's completely bonkers and just sounds stupid. This time around, as bonkers as it might be, I believe it. Yeah,
it's proper good. It's not pseudoscience anymore. It's proper good science that is linking into all this extreme stuff. So it's good as well. You've got the balance of things going on. You've got, on the one hand, Scully going and finding out all the science behind all this genetics, and then you've got Mulder doing his usual let's go and look at some stuff thing, and then you've got that really iconic moment where he sees the lab full of all the clones, which is that's one of those moments, and you've got that brilliant Mark Snow music where it's this really creepy kind of stuff going on. I can't do it properly with my mouth, but it's this really sort of creepy kind of bubbling cold sound, this eerie sound as he's going into this lab, and it's it's just brilliant. And then he pulls away to see Mulder looking at all these and it's just one of those, fuck me, what on earth is going on?
What have you just walked into, man?
Yeah, exactly. This is bigger than you've found before. And this is all after we see the Sakare, the doctor, escaping the ambulance, isn't it? And that's when we first see what the retrovirus can do. And obviously we don't know it's called the retrovirus yet, do we? But it's where the blood, the green blood, causes like a reaction, doesn't it? When it's exposed to air.
But again, it's something else. This is the first time we've seen it. It happens over and over again. Yeah. It's quite a staple of the show after this point. All the pretty much everything alien and mythology based from here on in has a scene of this happening. It's a really common thing from this point on, and it's weird to think. And again, like when I watched it recently, you go, Jesus Christ, is this where it started? Bloody hell, it's been. Again, you've gone, wow, that they've another thing introduced here that's, like I say, such a staple of the show after this.
The toxic blood. There's so much in this, where it does come back and they weave it into the bigger story. It's great. Equally great was when just before Mulder does go into the building full of the clones, he's talking to Scully and he says, "Keep up the good work." I nearly fell off my fucking chair. I was like, seriously? You never say that to her.
Condescending shithead.
Well, yeah. But he's like, normally he just rings off without even saying bye, or like in the previous episode we did where he just went, "No, it's not enough," and he just went, "Fuck off" with all your effort.
But she's even got that look on her face of say, "You what? Did you say that?
Yeah.
You little shit.
I think there's some really great scenes roll into each other with this. You've got that moment where Mulder sees the clones, which is one of those classic sort of, you'd put it in the compilation of scenes of the X-Files. But then afterwards, he's actually, unbelievably, even more, I think, than the Deep Throat scene at the end. This is my favourite moment of this entire episode, where Dr. Carpenter comes to Scully and she shows her the DNA results.
Yeah.
Because I just think the way she tells Scully about what she's found, about the extra nucleotides, I think they're called, which means that they're alien, is brilliant. Because it's really one of those fuck me moments where Scully's reaction is like, well, it's basically fuck me. As if to say, this is, it doesn't matter what Mulder might say and all the things she might see, this is hard evidence that is irrefutable that this is alien. And I love it.
It's a wonderful moment, actually, where, like you say, it doesn't matter how many times Mulder said, there are aliens and these are alien clones or whatever. Now it's someone in Scully's field telling her, this ain't from this planet. This is absolutely alien. And it's that moment where it doesn't matter how much she's seen or how much she believes, there has to be a point where Scully goes, fucking hell, maybe he's right.
Yeah, and that's the first time in this episode you get one of those where she looks at the doctor and goes, fucking hell. Because it just gives me chills. The way the doctor says, this exists nowhere in nature. It's so black and white about it. It's like, this is alien. There is no other way to explain this. This is alien. And it's just brilliant. It just gives me a bit of chills every time. It's great. And then you've got Mulder escaping from the lab when the men in suits come for him. He vaults that fence pretty well, doesn't he?
He don't fuck around, does he? he jumps that fence literally like his life depended on it. That guy went.
Yeah.
It would take me about 20 minutes to get over that fence.
Or it would be like Nick Frost in Hot Fuzz, where he just falls through the fence. That's what I'd be like.
Through it.
Yeah. That'd be me. Then obviously it builds to Mulder gets Scully and he intends to show her this place, when everyone's gone. And you do get a nice moment where Scully basically turns around to him and says, look, I'm sorry what I said before. I've seen something now that makes me go, I don't know what the fuck to think anymore. And she's nice and honest there. It's one of the first times that she turns around to him and says, maybe you're right, I don't know. Something has questioned my rational side so much, I don't know what to believe anymore. Yeah. And I really like that. But I do feel for Mulder because he says once we go in that room, nothing sacred will hold. And they get in there and there's nothing there.
It's an awful little moment though, isn't it? Because obviously, like we've just said, we've had Scully go. Scully's been told by another scientist that there's something alien going on, and then she's just admitted to Mulder that I might believe you. I've seen some shit, and then you walk into this room like, oh, we're back to this again. Mulder's seen it, we've seen it, and now it's fucking gone.
And she hasn't. It's just funny. I just feel like you just want there to be a look where Mulder goes, oh, fuck's sake, it was here 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Deep Throat comes in and delivers a lot of exposition, but in a way that's, it's mainly thanks to Jerry Hardin, I think. Admittedly, the script is really good here, but Jerry Hardin's just got a way of making exposition really good in his delivery and the way he says things.
He delivers it beautifully.
He's brilliant at it. He really is, and he gives them a hell of a lot here. This is where he really pushes his neck out because he comes at them and says, right, well, this was this. That's what they were. This was what was going on. This is what Berube did. This is this, and it's like, wow, okay, you've just unloaded a shitload, and that's the moment where I think he crosses the line. Actually, this is the point where I think he gives them too much at once.
But for us, it's a really good moment for us, though, because like we said earlier, they get so much story into this, and lesser TV shows or lesser films as well. That little info dump scene would have just fallen flat.
Yeah.
But like you say, because of Harding's work, you're looking at it going, whoa.
Yeah. It would have sucked the life out of a lot of TV episodes. It would have gutted it. It would have made you go, fuck's sake, just get on with it.
Oh, yeah. Well, it would have been the architect in The Matrix.
Oh, yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah. You would have gone, oh, my God. But in this case, it's tied into the urgency. That's what you feel. You feel a sense of urgency when he's telling them, because he's basically saying, look, they're cleaning this up a lot faster than I thought. You need to know all this, because we don't have time to fuck around. I don't have time to give you any more vague hints. You need to know, because this is going to go any minute now. And that's really good. He also says a couple of things, and this is my continuity nerd. And this is where Chris Carter has possibly shot himself in the foot here, because based on season 10, because when he talks about how they've had the technology since 1947, which is true, but he says that Roswell was a smokescreen. Now, season 10 has basically said, no, it wasn't.
Season 10 has gone, here's Roswell.
Yeah. and all the way through the show, there's been a lot of, I think even Smoking Man at one point says that Roswell wasn't real, and it was just, it was covered for something else. And Chris Carter in the new series went, no, that was bollocks. It actually was Roswell. And I think that's pissed off a lot of people. There's been a couple of people talking on the Xcast Facebook and stuff who are big X-Files fans who've been saying that there are entire fan forums right now that are really pissed off at how much he's messed up with continuity in season 10. And this is an example of what he's kind of chosen to ignore. Because, maybe Deep Throat's either lying or he didn't know the truth, but I doubt it. I doubt both of those.
But like you say, if it was just Deep Throat saying it, we could have maybe written it off as maybe he didn't know. Like he says, there are organisations within organisations. Not everybody knows everything. But
that's
because
true.
Because it's been denied a couple of times by a couple of people across, let's say just the initial series, so the initial 9 years. It's definitely it hasn't at this point. Not everybody must have been lied to, when the really higher ups like Smoking Man say, "Well, no, Roswell wasn't really a thing," and now Chris Carter's going, "Well, yeah, it kind of was," and actually Smoking Man was there,
right? And also Deep Throat was there because later on we see the photos of the syndicate going back 50, 60 years, and Deep Throat's in there. It's retroactive, but he's part of it. So he was high up, if there was this syndicate who were controlling all this, he'd know that. He'd know what happened at Roswell. You just have to kind of forgive it, really, because it was written 20 years before Chris Carter decided to fuck with it all.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things you can pick apart as much as you like. It's like trying to decide which bit of the Terminator wouldn't happen if Terminator didn't happen.
It's true.
You're like, well, it just... You will be unpicking threads for years
Forever.
trying to figure it out. You just have to let it go, suspend your disbelief for a little bit, realise that it's a show about aliens, and not take it too seriously.
That's exactly, and it is hard to do when you want continuity to track up, but it's true. There was some interesting things that I noticed in this info dump that I'd never noticed before. The first thing being that Sakar was dying of cancer. He was dying of cancer. The ET gene therapy, as Deep Throat says, cured him, and that I didn't clock that before, that he was actually dying and having this transfusion of DNA actually, and it's that whole thing of even though the alien power is dangerous, it also can heal people, human beings anyway. I thought that was really interesting.
It doesn't come up very often after this, though, does it?
No. There's obviously the whole thing of how people like Jeremiah Smith can put his hand over a gunshot and heal with the palm of his hand, and things like the Smoking Man's alien cure for all disease that he tries to give Scully years later, and things like that. But it's it is very much in the background that this alien power may be able to blow your head off with radiation or whatever, or kill you with a retrovirus. But it can also... It's the whole God parallel they do a lot more with later on, isn't it, really? Healing and all that.
It's also the thing that I think is kind of an underlying story with the X-Files, as it is with a lot of shows. If you get this kind of... You have this power that can heal people, but it's actually more effective as a weapon. So we're going to concentrate on that.
Yeah.
Instead of the good bits, which, I mean, it happens a lot, but it certainly happens a lot in the X-Files.
That's true. It is true. I also missed how Dr. Berube with the monkeys warned Sakar about that he was going to be killed, because Deep Throat says he wasn't meant to survive because they just needed the science and they couldn't have him floating about doing his thing. But the reason they killed Berube is because he told Sakar to get away. And I never noticed that before. And it actually makes the guy a little bit more of a good guy, because I was like, well, you didn't want him to die because he was your friend, and this all happened to. He had the therapy so he could try and save his life, and then he found out that he was going to die, and I just didn't clock that before. There's lots of study in it. There's lots of things that Deep Throat, because there's so much unloaded. It's like, there's a couple of things.
You can only take so much in, can't you?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that it's interesting to miss. You almost miss, but this is the point where basically Deep Throat says, "Look, I'm going dark now. I've given you all this." He says, I will have no further contact with you. And that's what he intends to do. This is it. He knows he's gone too far here. He knows he's pushed it, and he's got to go. He's got to go dark, otherwise he's in trouble. I love the way Mulder and Scully are immediately like, right, shit, we've got to do this now. And they're out the door, and they're like, I'm going here. And, of course, Mulder finds Sakare, and then he gets retrovirused by the crew cut man. But before that, there's the scene where Scully goes to find Dr. Carpenter and the research, and she's told she finds out that not only has she died, but her whole fucking family have died in a car accident. Inverted commas.
I watched it and went, that's a bit fucking harsh.
That's dark, isn't it? I was like, Jesus Christ. So
took out her entire family for it. Fucking hell.
I was like, wow. To me, that's Chris Carter saying, this is what they're capable of. She got so close to a massive truth that they think, well, maybe she did tell her family, we've got to kill them all. It's like, fucking hell.
I think this is it's that thing that you do for finales, though, isn't it? You have to up everything, turn everything up to 11, all the threat, the danger, the drama, all that lot, whack it all up as high as you can, and wiping out an entire family because of one DNA test that's ramping up quite a bit.
It again shows how important this whole case is, really, and how it's that whole, like you said, it's that whole finale thing of this is bigger than they've ever faced before. They're onto something huge here, and little do they realise just how close to the massive truth and the answers they are here. They don't get this close for years after this.
We are at a point, don't forget. We're in the middle of like the middle of the second act and start of the third, where everything's going on. So we're getting to see just how strong and how widely influencing these government types are. They've cleared out the storage area in lightning fast time. They've taken out an entire family. And what happens between now and the end of the episode. We're getting a lot of show of just how strong and how forceful and how determined these people are.
Yeah,
and like I say, they're ramping everything up just so we're all sitting there shitting ourselves for Mulder and Scully for the next 15, 20 minutes.
Well, you've got Mulder in what seems to be almost mortal danger. He's infected with an alien virus that has killed other people. He's captured by the scary fucking dude who's going around killing everybody. And it's great now because it puts Scully in the position of having to save him, and it's usually the other way around. And it's good because it's now she who has to speak to Deep Throat. She's the one who has to go and face this really, really alien thing.
Not entirely unlike the end of season 10.
Well, yeah, actually, yeah, that's true. Actually, there are some parallels. And again, that's season 10 ends on a fucking huge shit. This can't be how it ends. Everyone's going, you can't end it here. No way. But yeah, again, Deep Throat comes back into it, not wanting to, but he knows he's got no choice now, and he gets Scully into the facility. It's desperation all round at this point. I think this is another iconic scene. After Scully does all the getting into the facility and all the sneaking in, the bit where she takes the embryo out of the canister, and you get that really great bit of music that's like, it's that just fucking shit. This is an alien that she's got in her hands, and Scully's looking at it.
I tell you, mate, it was awful. I watched it. When did I watch it? I watched it last night, and then I watched it again this morning for note taking. When I watched it last night, I laughed straight away because I've never spotted this before. It looks like it's covered in that powdered sugar that jelly babies are covered in. It just looks like a giant jelly baby, and I must have been like deliriously tired. I just and just creased with laughter.
Brilliant. It does actually. Now you say.
I'm not saying at all that I then left the house, went to the cinema, and got a bag of jelly babies while I was in the cinema. That's not what I'm saying at all.
But yeah, it's a great iconic moment, and as I say, Scully has no idea how close she is to the truth at this point, and how, central she is to everything by taking that embryo. This is where we get to the end. Now, apart from the fact that it's a really fucking amazing final scene, this is. I mean, you get a brilliant conversation with Scully and Deep Throat in which she says, "Why should I give this to you? I don't know who you are. I can't. Why do I trust you?" And Deep Throat's like, "Fuck's sake, you haven't got any choice." He's really like, he's at the end of his tether now. He's saying, "Come on, they're gonna kill him." And he actually tees up a season 2 episode here just before he dies. He tells Scully about inoculations on kids.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember the episode Red Museum, but that's where we see the crew cut man again, and that's almost like a spiritual sequel to the Erlenmeyer Flask in about 10 episodes' time. So that's interesting. I assume Chris Carter had an idea for that in his head, and he thought, right, I'm going to put that out there and then come back to that later.
Yeah, but again, it's something that's been mentioned on and off the entire season, the entire series, after that, isn't it? The inoculating kids and experimenting on kids, and it's something that comes up in sci-fi shows a lot. Well, it was like the sole premise for most of Fringe, after all.
Yes, that's true, actually, yeah, it was. They kind of took that and ran with it, didn't they? I think, though, and the more I watch this episode, the more I think this. I think that a lot of this episode was about exposing and killing Deep Throat. And the reason I say that is because why would they kidnap Mulder? And equally, why would they try and get an alien embryo that they already have? This is what I can't understand. That if they are part of this conspiracy and they're covering up what Berube and all these guys have been doing, all of that comes back from that alien embryo in that base. So
yeah.
Why would they let Scully take it in the first place? This is the wellspring of alien DNA for the entire conspiracy. Surely that would be well protected.
I think you're certainly on something, because there's a couple of things that don't add up with this, and I think the first one is, how in the bloody hell does she get that thing out of the lab?
Exactly.
She wouldn't just be allowed to, under normal circumstances, she wouldn't be allowed to just pick it up and walk off with it.
Yeah.
So when you look at it like that, it does look like the entire episode has been this big mole hunt for Deep Throat.
Yeah, I really do think it is. I think part of it is anyway, or at least at the point where he compromises himself and he starts to give them too much. The Syndicate then went, shit, we've got a mole. Like later on when they realise that X or somebody is a mole later on, and it leads to X dying.
Yeah.
We just don't see the conversations. We see them with X and we see them wondering. But in this case, we haven't met those guys yet. So I think all those things are happening off screen, in which you've got them going, somebody's leaking too much information. We need to set a trap. And when Sakir dies and they've got Mulder, they go, right, this is the perfect trap then. Let's have Mulder be the trap, and whoever delivers the embryo is who is the mole. And I think that's what this has all been about. I think the whole they take an opportunity to create a fake deal to get something back they've already got, which is why they let Scully get it out in the first place. Yeah. And then they kill him, because why would they kill him either? Why kill Deep Throat at that point? I think they know that he's the last piece of the cover-up. But there's nothing in there that directly says this is what's happening. But I think that that's what's going on deep down.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with you completely. I think while as a conspiracy episode, it's absolutely brilliant. When you look at it like that, it's how it makes sense killing Deep Throat at the end.
Yeah,
and I think it's actually what got me the second time I watched it recently. I watched it. You go, Scully says to him, why should I trust you? You don't have any choice. You have to trust me. And then what does he say after he's been shot?
Yeah, that's true.
Trust no one. Well, hold on a minute. Both these things can't be true, mate. I think it's that moment. Actually, I really like. I really like the moment he's gone, well, now I know I'm done and you're fucked.
Yeah, basically, yeah. That's exactly what I think. It's the implication is terrifying, of what he says. The man who was, trying to help them expose whatever dark truth there is, turns around and says, "You can't trust anybody now. I'm dead. You are seriously fucked." And it's terrifying. It gives me chills. And it's so brilliantly executed. The whole sequence is full of tension, excitement, It's and you're just at the end thinking, oh fuck me, because again, it's that whole thing of they just didn't do this in TV at that time.
No.
They didn't kill people like Deep Throat. You know, he would have been a regular. He's a regular recurring character, played by a relatively well-known actor in Jerry Hardin as well on TV. You know, he's pretty well known. Nobody would have thought they were going to shoot him dead, and he's like, what? It just makes you go, shit. Anyone can die in this. Anyone could die. And
it pretty much it has the same basic effect as killing Sean Bean does in the end of season 1 of Game of Thrones. You go, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Hold on a minute.
Yeah, all bets are off. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not where I expected this to go.
Yeah. And it's just brilliant. It's so brilliantly done. And I really don't know if there was a better death in the show, actually. You know, they did some really good deaths when people died, but I don't know if anything was quite as powerful as Deep Throat and as just gut punching as Deep Throat.
I think the thing is, because at this point we are, like you say, we're used to Harding being there, and we're like, well, they're not going to get rid of him, and they do. When Mr. X goes, it's a bit shit, but you know, it's nothing close to that.
You kind of knew he was going to, you know, by that point though, you know, eventually he's going to go though, don't you? I mean, he's one of them. He kind of served his purpose in a way.
Oh yeah, he spends a lot of time beforehand getting in the face of the people that he's handing over to Mulder as well. Whereas Deep Throat has literally been skulking around in the shadows for a couple of months. I think you're right to kill him off a proper gut punch, and no, there isn't. I don't think there is a death that equals that for the rest of the show.
No, I don't think so. Nothing is quite as iconic as that in terms of a death. And then obviously it just sort of fades quite calmly out, doesn't it? You know, you've then got the final reveal that Mulder just calls Scully up and says, yep, they've shut us down, which I do think comes a bit out of nowhere. I mean, I would have quite liked this to have been worked slightly more into the story. And I know it's been built up over the last few episodes, like Tombs, when we saw Skinner and things like that. But
yeah, but there's been no mention of it in this episode. There's not, you know, up until this point, there's been no mention of Skinner. There's not been a visit to the office. Kind of none of that, and it does seem to have come out of nowhere. It is very much we need to end the season here.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is that it was basically their punishment. You know, for getting so close to everything, the syndicate just went, fuck. These guys nearly got there. We need to shut them down now. And it's like a reaction. It's like a quick reaction that they go, shit, shut them down. They got too close. And but obviously that's not in the episode in dialogue. It's all supposition. I just do, on the face of it, it just looks a bit like, oh, tag that on at the end.
It's almost, I mean, like you said at the beginning of the episode, we found out, or they found out, we didn't find out, they found out that Gillian Anderson was pregnant and weren't sure how they were going to do that with, what they were going to run with for the new season. The thing with doing that, you see, is it splitting them up like that, it gives them options for season 2. If there needs to be a casting change, if they need to give Gillian Anderson less screen time for a bit, you know, it gives them options, but it does feel like they've stuck it on at the end, right at the end of filming, gone, oh, lads, we need to do this just in case.
It does a little bit.
Although I have to admit, it's not completely throwaway. There's the one little bit in that scene where you go, from the pilot.
Yeah, well, that is true. Yeah, that is true. And I think the whole idea of it was that it bookends everything. You know, in that, you know, you've got a nighttime call, a scene between Mulder and Scully, and you've then got the Smoky Man, obviously, doing exactly what he does in the pilot and putting the embryo in the big chamber. And to me, that's what sells it all. That's the point where you go, okay, this all connects. Because obviously, by this point, the Smoky Man, you've seen him with Skinner, you've seen him at the FBI. This is the point now where you see that he's got the alien embryo. So obviously the crew cut man works for him. Yeah. Which again makes me think that it was all a stage to get Deep Throat killed, because they were mates. You know, they knew each other really well, Deep Throat and Smoking Man, and so it all connects up really by the end. Although we don't know quite the extent of it yet, but it does make sense.
It does bookend it again though. So you know, in case it did turn out to be a series finale instead of a season finale, it bookends it nicely. You've got the call, the closing down the X-Files. You've got Smoking Man doing his thing in the file room, just like the end of the pilot. It's a nice bookend. If for some reason they decide not to bring it back, we'd have all been going mental. Yeah. You know? And again, in this day and age, we'd have done a change.org petition.
Yeah.
posted stuff to Fox or whatever, but it would have been a half decent ending to the show as much as it would have driven us mental.
Well, the good news is that there was never any intention that it was going to be the end. Luckily, I mean, it wasn't that the show was on the bubble. They had got a season 2. That's the good thing about it. They just creatively chose to do this, which is good, and it does, like you said, it tees up a very interesting beginning for season 2 actually, and it allows them to shift a few pieces on the board and really make an interesting, opening arc for season 2, which is one of the strongest opening arcs they've done. They did, which we will get to. But yeah, the Erlenmeyer Flask is just phenomenally good. It's one of I would put it in my top 10 all-time X-Files episodes, I have to say. I think I really would.
Yeah. It's easily one of the best written, best acted, best directed, just best paced episodes that I think we get, not just in season 1, but for the whole show.
Couldn't put it better myself. It's just great. So yeah, that was the Erlenmeyer Flask. Instead of doing Do You Believe In this time round, we're going to finish off with a little special top 3, bottom 3. And we've decided to choose our overall season best and worst. So we'll start with your third best episode.
Number 3, I think, is probably Ice.
Good choice. Why is that?
I love Ice. Well, it's the X-Files does the thing. And it's just as tense as the thing. It's really well made. It's creepy. It's a little scary. I really like it. It feels like a horror episode.
I think yeah. I think that's pretty much spot on there. I think my number 3 would be. Actually, yeah, I think it's Ice. I suspect we're going to have the same 3. Actually, I think it is Ice because I was deciding whether to flip it around with the other one, but no, it's Ice for similar reasons. It just works completely. It's just brilliantly paced, really scary.
It's a standalone episode. It's something quite special, actually, for you to be able to get that much into 45 minutes and it still be believable and it still be, a little bit scary. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your worst one? Your number 3 worst episode?
My number 3 worst, Gender Bender.
Really? Yeah, you're not a fan?
Yeah, not a fan at all. Slow, boring, pointless with so many things that just don't make sense. It just definitely not the worst. There are 2 worse in this one as far as I'm concerned, but it is definitely one of them. I'm just not a fan.
Yeah, it's not in my bottom 3. It's certainly not the best. It's nowhere near the best, but there are certain things in Gender Bender I do like. And when we did the episode with Wayne Talbot, we talked about some of the stuff we like. I like the ending. I like the batshit crazy ending, even though it's ridiculous. It's not among my worst, but it's certainly not among the best, definitely. So I can see why it's down below, and you wouldn't be on your own either. And in fact, I used to think it was worse than it is, actually. But it's actually, I think it's quite nicely shot as well, and things like that. But, okay, well, my bottom 3, my number 3, bottom 1, is the Jersey Devil, because it just bored me to death. Really. It's just really, really fucking boring. Me and Zach Moore both ripped it apart in episode 5, so go back and check that one out, guys.
That was a fun episode to listen to, actually. I tend to listen to most of my podcasts like when I'm walking the dog, and I walk the dog going, yeah.
Cheers, that's good. It's good to know we're not talking out of our asses. It's just really boring. Really boring. Number 2 then. Best then. Brooker, what's yours?
Best number 2, Squeeze.
Oh, good one. Yeah. That's not actually in my top 3. It's close, but great choice. Great choice.
Again, I mean, I remember saying this when we recorded Squeeze together and when we were doing it, and it's an early favourite of mine just because it's basically the thing that got me into the X-Files. It's fucking scary. It's still, if you let your mind wander a bit and it's a bit dark and you can't get to sleep and things start creaking in the night, you go, oh, fucking hell. Again, another really good horror episode, and this is kind of what the X-Files was for me when I first started watching it. Was a lot of it was about the horror aspects of their episodes. There were some issues with the making of the episode, as we spoke about before, like with dodgy directors and that, which messed with the episode a little bit. But as a whole, Tomb's still one of the scariest monsters they've ever had for me.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think he was the most iconic monster of the season 1, definitely. I think a lot of people would put Squeeze in their top 3. Absolutely. My number 2 is Beyond the Sea. because I just think that's a stellar piece of television. It's brilliant drama. It's creepy. It's brilliantly written. It's got an amazing performance by Brad Dourif. Clarence Moy and I both really glowed about this when we talked about the episode. It's one of Glenn Morgan and James Wong's best scripts, and they're two of my favourite writers.
It's probably my top 5 for the season. If it wasn't for Toombs, I probably would have picked Beyond the Sea as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would. So yeah, it's just top quality. What's your number 2 worst then?
Well, you've had it already. So Jersey Devil.
Oh wow, you hate it even more than I do.
utter guff. I remember, and even now I watch it and go, why the fuck am I watching this episode? It's just nothing about it makes sense. It's just so shit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a snooze fest. It's just, it had potential to be something really interesting with the devil itself. It's just, it really hashes up a potentially cool urban Bigfoot story, which is a real shame actually. But yeah, I agree completely. Okay, so my number 2 worst is Shapes, which is the werewolf, again with Zach. Poor Zach. Zach keeps getting the shitty ones to do on his show. But yeah, we gave Shapes a good hiding. But pretty much, it's
deservedly so as well. It is a pretty crap episode. Piece
of shit, boring. Again, does nothing interesting with the werewolf mythology tied into Native Americanism. Languid, it's just really hard fucking work to watch, as we talked about in the episode. Yeah, and I can't be doing with it. Instead of asking your number 1, I'm going to ask your bottom 1, your worst one. We'll do those first, and then we'll do our best. So, what's your worst episode?
Okay, so my worst one, I get the feeling you and me are probably going to be sharing.
I think I know what it's going to be.
It's fucking space.
Yes!
It is, without a doubt, not just the X-Files, but some of the worst TV ever made.
Yeah.
I do not understand. I remember the Mars thing and it might be a face on when it happened, but to make an entire TV show out of Phantom of the Opera masks that you saw in a photo, utter wank. Just absolute shite TV at the highest order.
Just garbage, and Matt Latham and I had a lot of fun tearing it a new one some time ago. He hates the fact that he nearly got top marks on the quiz for an episode he despises, which I find funny.
It's just so crap. The whole, the face, the ghost face wobbling over someone else's face. And don't. It just looks like someone's drunk and looking at themselves in the mirror.
It's terrible. It's a bad script. It's a bad idea. It's badly written. It's badly directed. It's got some really questionable suggestions about what caused the Challenger disaster as well, which I didn't like. It's just shite. Absolute shite. So I'm agree. We got the same bottom one. Yeah, worst episode of season 1. Space. Fact. Let's cheeriness then. Let's do our best ones. So, what's your number 1?
The Erlenmeyer Flask.
Yeah, again, same. Yeah.
How can it not be? Like we said at the beginning of the episode, literally a perfectly made episode of television, not just of the X-Files, but just a perfect 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I can't fault it at all.
I can't put it any better. Just top drawer. I would give honourable mentions to Deep Throat the episode. I think definitely that would be up there for me. Squeeze again would absolutely be up there. I think EBE would be up there. But yeah, there's more duds or more episodes in season 1 than there are classics. Let me ask you a final little question before we do the quiz. What would you give the season out of 10? Season 1. What would you give that out of 10?
God, that's tough. That's tough because you get, like your great ones. You get your Deep Throat and your Erlenmeyer Flask, which really, again, they bookend the season really, really well. But there's so many duds in this season. I think it sits a very solid 6 out of 10 base for me. I think for the whole season. Yeah,
I'm gonna again agree. Sounds really boring that we agree on so much, but I'm gonna agree. I think a 6. And you want to give it more for episodes like you've mentioned, like the Erlenmeyer Flask and whatnot. Nice, but it's got to aggregate ultimately. And really, those are the exceptions to a fairly average to poor rule. Actually,
And I have to admit, I know I said this when we recorded it a couple of weeks ago, but to look at Tombs, the episode Tombs, as its own episode, and find myself so disappointed when I put it up on such a high pedestal for so many years, I was gutted, absolutely gutted.
Oh, I know. It could have been a better season. It did thankfully have enough goodness in it for people to give it more of a second chance. And the good news is, it almost immediately is bloody great. Straight away after this, they really seem to click into a rhythm, and it does. Season 2 is much better than this season,
without a doubt. They like we said a lot of the times while we were recording this season, they were still finding their feet, and they took longer than most shows are ever allowed to take to find their feet. But once they do, you get this episode, and then you get the first few episodes of season 2. It is hit after hit after
pretty
hit
much.
Quite a while.
Yeah,
and season 2 is a massive step up from this one.
Yeah, you get the odd dud in season 2, but there's less. There is less than this at this season, I think. So it will be fun to revisit that. But yeah, 6 out of 10 overall. I think is a good average, definitely. So let's finally wrap up season 1 with the quiz for the Erlenmeyer Flask. Can you, for the last episode of season 1, beat your score? Can you make this? Or can you equal your score for Lazarus? I keep saying beat. I need to get a 7th question for you so you can beat. And we'll end up with a quiz that's 50 questions long when you keep beating your own score. 50 questions on the truth. Imagine that. Fucking hell.
Oh, bloody hell.
Kill yourself, wouldn't
well,
you?
To be honest, 50 questions on the truth is basically 50 questions on the entire show, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true.
It's a 2-hour flashback, let's be fair.
Yeah. So, okay. 5 questions and a quote on the Erlenmeyer Flask. Are you ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Question 1. The car that he swapped out early on, that Mulder finds out about, was registered to a company in what town?
Shit.
No, not that.
Gaithersburg?
Oh, well done! Gaithersburg or Gathersburg, or she says Gaithersburg, but it looks like Gathersburg when you write it down. Yeah, well done. Off the grid. Excellent. Question 2. Now, this might be tricky. What's the number Mulder phones Danny for a name for?
So you want the number that he gives Danny?
The number he gives Danny. Well,
It's
yeah.
301-555-2804.
Well done. It's very good. Yeah.
I've got the number he phones from as well, if you want.
Oh, that's good. That's good. You've done your research. Okay, question 3. What's the address for Zeus Storage?
It's 1616 Pandora Street.
1616 Pandora Street. Well done. You have written everything down. I think you're going to do this. I've got a feeling.
Well, like I said earlier, there's not that much really to write down.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
There's not that much that goes on that needs to be written. So I think I got most of it.
I think you're doing well. Question 4. Name the type of cancer that Dr. Sakare was dying of.
No, not a clue.
Oh, no. I thought you were going to do it. It's melanoma. Melanoma cancer. Question 5. What's the password Scully has to use to get access to the alien embryo?
It's purity control.
Purity control. Again, another massive mythology thing dropped in. Because the alien virus, the substance is called purity, apparently. So it's like, big thing. Okay, finally the quote.
I think this one will be tough because there's a lot of talking in this episode.
We'll see. I think you might get this. Okay. I'm warning you. If this is Monkey P, you're on your own.
Okay, so it's when after the doctor's killed himself when he's been murdered, and he finds the bottle that says purity control on the bottom and wants her to test it.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Who says it?
Oh, Scully says it to Mulder.
Yeah. Well done. Yeah. That's a great line, that is. This is Monkey P, you're on your own.
It did make me laugh.
That's really good. 5 out of 6.
I can't complain at that.
Gutted you didn't get the cancer, though. Well, no. I'll put that a different way.
Gutted you didn't get cancer. I've not been said. Not many people have said that to
me. Yeah. Sorry about that. That's an awful thing to say. But yeah, well done. 5 out of 6 ain't bad. So that's it. Season 1 is in the bag. We have done it. We've got here. one season of The X-Files cleared. Thanks a lot, Brooker, for joining me, not just for this episode, but for so many season 1 episodes. It's been great.
No, I say it every week, and every time we record, it's an absolute pleasure. It's lovely to have an excuse to watch the episodes again. Like I keep saying, with a bit of a critical eye, and it's an absolute pleasure to sit and to chat with you, mate, about X-Files. It's nice to have someone. Like I sit and watch them with my wife, but she's not that big a fan, so she's not as interested in chatting about it as you.
Yeah, no, I know the feeling. Yeah. It is good. Cheers. Same here. I feel the same way. It's good stuff. So yeah, you'll definitely be back for season 2.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. We can't keep you away for that one. There's some great episodes coming up in season 2. We will be recording season 2 in a few months. We're going to have a little bit of a break. Yeah, we will definitely be back. Don't worry, for season 2. We've got some terrific guests as well as Brooker. People who've appeared in this first season. Some new faces who have agreed to come on so far. So, yeah, and who knows, we may get a few more interviews in the bag and things like that with people connected to the X-Files like we did earlier in the year, but we'll see how we get on. Yeah, until next season, Brooker, where can we find you and keep people happy for their Brooker fix?
So I tend to spend most of my time wherever I am. I'm always on Twitter. I'm at Brooker411, where I talk films, I talk games, I talk pretty much anything that's annoying me at that precise point in time. And I do a lot of podcasting and film reviews for the guys over at Failed Critics.
Great stuff. It's all brill. Read Brooker's reviews. Go and listen to Failed Critics because it's great laugh. It's good stuff. We are on the X_cast at Twitter, on Facebook at the Xcast, and we're part of the Black Hole Media Podcast Network, full of lots of other great podcasts at www.blackholepodcasts.com. So there'll be stuff on there to keep you busy until the Xcast returns for its second season and begins with Little Green Men onwards. So, yeah, we will be back. So, until then, remember Deep Throat's final words. Trust no one.
What are you gonna do?
I'm not gonna give up. I can't give up. Not as long as the truth is out there.